Hello everyone, I am Eric at Flyin Miata. With me today is Kyle at Flyin Miata. Even though we have the same domain name, we're not related. Welcome to another FM Live, 2 o'clock every Thursday, live from Flyin Miata World Headquarters. So today, like I said, we've got a Kyle with us, and we're going to talk to him about his car. So before we get to the beautiful apparatus behind us, let's ask Kyle some questions. So got my clipboard ready to go. Got a bunch of great questions from Instagram and other places on social media. So if you've got more questions while we're going along here, go ahead and post them in the comments and we'll keep an eye out for them and answer them as best we can as we go along. So welcome, Kyle.
Thank you.
So how long have you been at Flyin Miata? Let's start there.
I will be celebrating my 9th anniversary with Flyin Miata this year.
9 years, okay. So nearly a decade of experience eating, breathing, sleeping, nothing but Miatas.
Yes.
All right. So you've had quite a few different positions here at Flyin Miata. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, I started in the salvage department. I applied for a mechanic's position, but they didn't have one available, and they asked if I wanted to work salvage. I said, sure. Never done that before, but let's go for it. So I spent my first year, a little over a year, just taking Miatas apart, selling their parts. And then a position moved to become a mechanic, and I was able to take advantage of that opportunity.
Nice.
Spent quite a while as a mechanic, doing anything from oil changes to building V8s. And now I'm working as an apprentice engineer. Developing products.
Okay. So while you were a mechanic, I think you probably did some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, we're around these cars all the time, so it's easy to forget that what we're doing is kind of exciting. So you had a pretty big role in developing the ND V8, as I understand it.
Yeah, so unlike the previous V8s, we didn't have a kit off the shelf available from a supplier to work with. So kind of had to start from scratch and figure out how are we going to mount this engine inside of this car without a kit available. So did a lot of that figuring and had to deal with a lot of electronic issues.
Yeah.
And
so there were some pretty big challenges with that?
There was, yes. The engine fits barely. Each car kind of has their own fitment issues with the engine, and figuring those out is a process, but by far the biggest issue was electrical. And
wow.
I didn't do most of that. Keith here did, but there still was a lot of work in getting that figured out and getting it sorted.
Cool. Yeah. So building Flyin Miata little beasts.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. So now you're doing product development.
Yes.
Anything you can give us a sneak peek on or anything like that, or is it all pretty hush-hush?
Well, I'll go with stuff that's already been released. I came up with the replacement dipstick handle. So if you've broken off your dipstick, like most people have, you can simply snap on this replacement one. It's made out of a carbon fiber infused filament, and so it's plenty strong and durable.
So we actually have an FM Live episode where Kyle and Brandon talk about our new 3D printer, and that's where those dipstick handles come from. So, well, let's dive right into it. Let's talk about your car.
Sure.
So let's start right at the top. How long have you had it?
I'm actually have had it for about 4 years, and I've yet to actually drive it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some backstory there. What happened?
So kind of coming off my salvage roots, I found this car at an insurance auction, and from the pictures it didn't look like there's much in the way of damage. And they only have limited pictures and limited descriptions, so I kind of had to make a judgment call. Do I feel like this car could be worth it?
Sure.
And I thought if the drivetrain is solid, by all means it's worth it. So I think my actual purchase price was $1,200, and then had to pay some to get it shipped here. Unfortunately, even though the body itself is in pretty good shape, the drivetrain was not. Something came up and punched the radiator, and
yeah.
they must have left the engine running, and it overheated significantly, so the engine was toast. Plus, the car was an automatic, and I knew up front that that was going to be my first and most important modification of the car, is converting it to a manual.
A full transmission swap.
Yes.
With pedals and hydraulics and all the associated fun bits there.
Yes.
So, okay. So, was there any other damage other than the punched radiator and stuff like that, or how else was the car?
Nothing significant. I have determined that the car is from a more rusty state than Colorado.
Right.
I found evidence that the car is originally from Illinois, and so there is some rust above the fenders, and there were some rusty frame rails on the front of the car that had to be replaced.
Sure. So, folks out there in Illinois, if you recognize the car, guess what? It now belongs to Flyin Miata. So 4 years of build.
Yeah.
So what all has gone into this bad boy?
Well, it took a while to get the frame rails repaired and then getting the drivetrain swapped in.
Sure.
The car spent a lot of time in my garage, which is not really well suited for working on cars. I do have a family, and like most families, we have a lot of stuff. So it was kind of packed in and around the car, so it was difficult to work on the car. So finally I said, I just need to get the car up to work, occupy a lift for a little while. And so the progress of the last year has been leaps and bounds ahead of the progress of the 3 years previous.
Sure. And here and there, you know, if you own a Miata and you work at Flyin Miata and you leave your car here for any extended period of time, these guys will say, hey, we need to test some parts. Can we borrow your car? And then you're without a Miata for a few months. Well, maybe not that long, but I think that happened to you a couple of times.
It did. So when we were developing the new version 2 frame rails, we wanted to do some stiffness testing, and so my car was the guinea pig.
The guinea pig, sure.
We had the car chained to a series of jacks to keep most of the chassis solid, and then a large beam was bolted to the front of the car, and weights applied to determine how much twist there was in the chassis before and after frame rails.
Cool.
So that was its major contribution while it was here.
Well, okay. Well, let's move on to what kind of FM parts, what kind of upgrades have you done, that kind of stuff. Anything under the hood?
There is some stuff under the hood. One of my favorite upgrades is the hood prop rods. Get rid of that pesky dipstick.
Sure.
Dipstick. Hood prop rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got dipsticks on the mine. So that is one upgrade. Obviously, I have done the Garrett turbo conversion on the Mazda Speed drivetrain that's in the car.
Okay. Obviously not original to the car.
Yeah, since the engine that came with the car was warped, or at least the head was significantly warped, and because I wanted to get rid of the automatic transmission, it needed a new heart, and one came up just at the right time, and I was able to acquire it, and now it has a second life.
Excellent. So is this in a sense a stage 1 turbo or a custom spec turbo? What else can you tell us about it?
So it would be the equivalent of our custom spec turbo, because it is running a standalone ECU.
Okay.
I was able to get one of the last FM221 ECUs that we had available. So it is
nice.
Running standalone, and but other than that, it's a very basic kit. Got the 2560 turbo with the recirc option, so it's
okay. Yeah. So anything else under the hood? I suppose you did some maintenance and.
I did full maintenance to the engine, so I replaced the timing belt, all the seals. The belts were actually in pretty good shape. This engine, when it was pulled from its donor, had, I want to say, 54,000 miles on it.
Oh, nice.
So fairly low mileage. Obviously, I had to replace the radiator. I have not replaced the condenser yet. I Still have the compressor mounted, and I still have the AC lines at home, but
Okay.
I haven't actually hooked up AC. The goal right now is, this is a salvage car, so I do have to get it through a state inspection to be determined to be road legal, and just decided that it was my main goal is to get this thing running and on the road first, and then we can worry about some of those other upgrades and fixes.
So eagle-eyed viewers will notice that Kyle has clocked the Mazda Speed oil fill cap in the correct orientation, despite the fact that it's not actually a Mazda Speed, paying homage to the rareness of the car, I guess. So peripherally, anything with going on with the chassis, brakes, suspension, anything like that?
So brakes are stock. Suspension, it's kind of on a loaner set. It is on a set of actually quite old VMAX classics.
Okay.
And so those will be likely upgraded at some point.
Okay.
They definitely need adjusted. I didn't actually do an adjustment after installing them, and so you could tell it's sitting a little lower than I would actually like.
Okay. So based on what you're telling me, there's some future mods that you have planned for this car. So what kind of stuff do you have left to finish? Let's start there.
Let's see. So definitely, I'd like to do suspension.
Sure.
I like these wheels and tires for probably a street setup, but I would like to get something a little bit more robust for track use.
Right.
I definitely need the car to get cleaned up a little bit. So a good detail. But like most people, I do have a catalog wish list.
Right.
Some of the things aesthetic, I want to do the LED light kits that we now sell.
Excellent.
Just to brighten things up and make the car a little more visible out on the road.
Any, how about brakes, cooling, any kind of chassis bracing?
I would like to do brake kit. I do have the version 2 frame rails. I don't have the butterflies, since we don't have them in yet. I would think that I could probably stand to put the entire catalog on the car if I could. I mean, I'm talking frog arms, everything, but I also have a budget, and so
I gotcha.
It's going to be a little bit of a slow process getting some of that stuff done.
Well, a guy can dream. Right?
But I think suspension and maybe brakes would probably be the most logical next step, just to make this a really thrilling track car.
Yeah. Do you have a particular Flyin Miata brake kit in mind?
I kind of, since this is still somewhat a street car, I like to keep the stock rear caliper for a more robust parking brake. But I would like to upgrade the fronts to likely a Willwood setup. So.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, what else have we got? So we've kind of talked about some future stuff. So I'm going to check with Bailey and see if we've got any questions popping up yet. No questions popping up on the feed just yet. But again, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the comments, and we'll either be able to answer them while we're still live, or grab them when we're done and talk to you afterwards. So we do have a bunch of questions that we already gathered from social media before we started filming this morning or this afternoon. So question number one, how do you pass emissions? You've got a turbo kit, a standalone ECU. How do you pass emissions?
Well, so far I'm lucky to live in an area that doesn't have emissions.
Okay.
I would assume that if Grand Junction were to acquire emissions, that we would likely take something on like a tailpipe sniffer similar to Denver. I would maybe even have to get to the point where maybe reverting back to a factory ECU if possible.
Okay, so since we don't live in an area that requires emissions testing, that's not something that we have to do. But the car still has like a catalytic converter on it, for example.
It does. So it actually, because it's a Mazda Speed drivetrain, I did acquire the Mazda Speed full exhaust for it.
Okay. Yeah, which is part of the Garrett turbo conversion kit.
Yes,
The downpipe, I should say.
Yes. I'm sorry.
I gotcha. Okay. So, okay. Next question. Do you know, do you have any clue yet how much power you'll be making?
Well, it should be right around 230 at the wheels. Just knowing this engine and turbo combination with a standalone computer, that's should be the area where.
Yeah, is that kind of your power goal, per se, or you think you might go higher than that at some point, or
well,
dream a little?
Yeah, I think doing E85 would be nice in the future if E85 came back. We used to have E85 here and no longer do. So yeah, it's. I think 230 is plenty for now.
Yeah. And the next question was actually piggyback or aftermarket ECU, and you mentioned that you got one of the last FM 221s.
Yeah.
So there's the engine management that allows you to run the larger fuel injectors, take a little bit more advantage of boost. So that kind of leads into another one of our questions is based on your 230 horsepower goal, what kind of PSI do you think you'll be running at that point?
Well, right now I do not have a boost controller on it at all. So it kind of just depends on where I set the actual wastegate. I'm guessing that will probably be in the 10 PSI range.
Okay. Yeah, so very manageable for a turbo that size, a GT 2560.
Yeah.
And very manageable for a healthy stock engine.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, what do we got here? So, kind of an interesting question.
Sure.
We'll pose this to Kyle. Would you rather own a BP Turbo or a Honda K-Swap?
I've never had the opportunity to drive a K-Swap. One of my favorite cars that I had previously was a Integra GSR, which had a B series, and I've got to say that having a really high revving naturally aspirated engine is quite fun to drive. But I don't know, not having driven the K series, I'm probably going to lean toward the turbo. It just has that little bit more of a punch to it.
Since we work at Flyin Miata, 99% of the stuff that we see is our own product. So we're actually pretty excited when a different Miata shows up with something else that we've not seen before. So anybody running around out there that wants to come to Flyin Miata headquarters and show off their K-Swap to us, maybe even throw us the keys.
That'd be good.
Maybe not. But yeah, it's. I think both are quite potent, but it's really hard to beat a turbocharged Miata, for sure. Okay. So, a little bit of a philosophical question. What would you consider to be the most important upgrade for an NB?
Ooh.
Not a trick question.
V8.
A V8. That's an important upgrade for your NB Miata.
If money weren't an object, I would say buy absolutely. But I don't know. The cars are already pretty stiff, so I don't know. I think that kind of across the board, the answer is usually suspension.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of taking what the Miata does well and making it better.
Yeah. Because you can have a lot of fun in a car that isn't all that powerful. As long, you know, I think cornering is a more thrilling experience than just raw power.
Cool. Okay. So next question. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. This person's asking about the stock fuel pump. So, in terms of the turbo and or fueling requirements, the OEM pump not being able to keep up. What do you do after that? What's a fix for that, I guess?
Well, I have one of our Deutschwerks fuel pumps in there.
Okay.
Just because the stock pump probably wouldn't quite be up to the task of forced induction, so Deutschwerks was the way to go. It's something that we carry and we find to be reliable and quieter than other options out there, and
So I believe that's a 165 liter per hour.
I believe that is the one I have
Yeah.
in there. I'd
check
have
the,
to
check the website for more accurate information. Okay, so yeah, I suppose beyond that, you'd be looking at other things like building the engine or whatever to really start to outrun the stock fuel system. I mean, the in terms of the pump and the tubing and the rail itself.
Yeah, and or E85 is another way to overwhelm
sure.
some of that. Right now, I am still running the stock rail, stock plumbing. So I've swapped out the pump, and then I have aftermarket injectors.
Okay. And so it sounds like the setup that you've got is going to be plenty in terms of delivering fuel volume.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, if I need to upgrade more in the future, I will, but I think it's going to come when E85 comes.
Okay. E85 is good stuff, that's for sure. All right, checking again. Let's see here. So a lot of people were curious about, so what's the story with those guys?
So a lot of this car, I'll try not to make too long of a backstory. A lot of this car is, I had to just try to find pieces to complete the car.
Okay.
So one of my coworkers was selling this set that he had on his car. This is actually kind of the set that has been owned by probably at least half of the Flyin Miata staff.
That's right.
I think it started with Brandon.
Uh-huh.
So these are a set of Kosei K1s.
Uh-huh.
And they are a older, outdated, I believe, no longer available version.
Right.
So they are a 16 by 7, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And then the tires that are on there are Yokohama S drives, also discontinued or replaced with a updated version. And they are on there. They're a good tire, but they're on there because they came on the wheels.
Well, it's still kind of cool that you were able to get something that works with the car rather than something ugly with minivan tires. Or
yeah, and the original wheels coming from Illinois, they were extremely corroded.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And the tires that were on them were all just trashed, and so it kind of just made sense to get a set that was available.
Very cool. Okay. All right. More questions here. Let's see here. Top up or top down? What's your preference?
Well, this is Colorado, so it might be top up in the morning and top down in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm generally more of a top up guy. My first Miata, I had a hard top for a little while and kind of, I don't know, I think there's advantages to both. Just depends on the day.
Yeah.
But I'm not a die-hard top down guy. If it's cold, my top's up.
Right. Yeah. So do you have a temperature threshold? I usually say if it's say over 45 degrees, I'm not afraid to put the top up or top down.
Yeah. Or when my ears start to get cold is the big thing, I think.
Yeah, that awkward moment when you have to jump out of the car because it's too cold to keep driving.
Yeah.
Okay. So, any idea how much you've got into the car so far?
That's a good question. Too much.
Too much?
Yeah,
too much.
Well,
actually, probably just right. Is a better way to think of it?
Sure. To recreate this car in another way, I probably could have spent a little bit less, but I didn't get all the experience of being able to do some of the things I've done on it. Okay. So I don't know that I have a number. I'm going to guess probably around 7 to 8.
Okay. Yeah, like any project, there's always surprises, and it always asks you for more money.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, if this car came with a solid engine, it would have been far less. But that was kind of a big twist. Slightly anticipated for, but not very welcomed realization.
Okay. So, any questions coming through yet, Bailey? So, we're covering a lot of territory here. So, again, if you have questions, feel free to email us, call us, or submit them in the comments, and we'll take care of those for you. So we kind of touched on this, the last question I'll ask Kyle. We kind of touched on this a little bit already, but you know, reaching into your dreams for the car, what kind of future mods do you have in mind?
Well, I've already got.
Besides throwing the catalog.
Well, I've already got another set of wheels and tires lined up. So I think as far as purchase, my next upgrade will likely be suspension.
Okay.
And I think I'm debating whether or not to go. I'm leaning toward the Conies.
Right.
I think they feel great on the street and yet still huge advantage at the track. I think the ride height setup of our springs is just right. I like the adjustability without spending a lot. VMAXs are great. I feel like they're a little bit more suited for more of a track specific car, where this one might see track here and there.
Okay. Yeah. So
but we don't have a lot of local track events, so I want this car to be drivable comfortably all the time.
Cool. Okay.
So I think Conies
so suspension and so would you keep these wheels, or would you use a second set for winter tires or track tires, or
to be determined.
To be determined. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe 3 sets of wheels, or
Yeah.
4, or
Eventually there's going to be someone else at Flyin Miata who hasn't owned these wheels yet, who needs to own these wheels, and maybe I'll sell them to them.
Yeah. The wheels, you don't own the wheels, they own you until they're ready for the next person.
Yeah, I think so.
Gotcha. All right.
Well,
yeah.
let me throw out one more upgrade.
All right.
I think cooling. We do live in a desert environment.
Right.
Track use does tend to get our cars pretty warm, and I just put in a stock radiator with stock fans, and I think extended track use, that's not going to be good enough.
Right.
So I'm going to obviously do our cross flow radiator and one of our fan kits.
Okay.
Airflow kits.
Nice. Okay. Well, one more question check. No more questions. All right. Well, I've gone through my list of questions and probably worn Kyle out pretty good talking with him here. So thank you so much for joining us on FM Live. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave any questions or comments you have below. Hit the subscribe button. That way you'll get notifications when the next videos come out. We do this every Thursday at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Eric. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.